Welcome, everybody. StephenGray here. You are either watching the StephenGray Vision YouTube channel, pardon me, or you are listening to this on Anchor.fm and one of the spin-off places that Anchor sends the audio to. And the purpose of this, if you have not watched any of these before, the purpose of these is to contribute to an absolutely necessary awakening on this planet by interviewing, primarily at the moment, the main task of this channel is to interview people who have some very interesting things to say about work with psychedelics in particular, with the overarching context of the fact that the psychedelics are actually not the be-all and the end-all in themselves, but they are perhaps our most powerful tools to contribute to the consciousness transformation that we, again, absolutely are in dire need of on this planet. So one of those people is the person that I am going to be interviewing in a moment here, and she does some very, very interesting work. She goes by the name of the Teafaerie, and she's a writer. There's very interesting little things in her bio here that I might even ask her about. She describes herself as a writer, a nanny, an actress, a flow arts teacher, a childbirth doula, a homeless person, that was the surprising one, aid worker, live action storyteller, toy inventor, app designer, street performer, and party promoter. Before the pandemic, she worked as a psychedelic sanctuary volunteer at about 25 festivals a year, and her column called Tea Time Psychedelic Musings from the Center of the Universe appears on the excellent psychedelic information site erowid.org. That's EROWID.org, which is a great font of information if you're not familiar with it. So let's get right into it. Welcome, Teafaerie.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Good. So, as I said, let's just jump right into the deep end, and I want to ask you about your work. My first question basically is, you've described yourself as a trip sitter, and I mentioned in this short bio that you work at festivals, many a year, and for many years, I think you said 20 years or so, you've been doing this. And so, tell me about this work. What do you do there? Anything about it?
Um, I've been doing it at festivals for maybe more like 10 years, but I've been doing it for over 20 years. I wrote the Trip Sitter's Guide on Erowid in like 2005, and I'd been doing it for a long time at that point. Not professionally. I don't have a problem with anyone who's doing that, who's making money. Nobody pays me because they know that I'd pay to do it. But it really varies. You said it was a birth doula. I've only been to a couple of births, but it's that sort of position. It's the person who's there with you. I'm not the midwife. I'm not a shaman. I can't come in after you. I'm not a therapist. I'm just the person who spends time with you and is there with you and is, there to be your cheerleader for the experience, which can be anything from just sitting there meditating next to somebody, holding their hand, listening to their testimony, actively getting up and walking and talking and raving with them, like, weeping on your chest, grounding, like just, trying to break loops. It really can honestly be such a wide range of experience, but it's the person who is going to stick with you till sunrise and, just be your buddy. So that you know that there's somebody taking care of your body, for instance. You don't have to worry about monitoring your own safety because I'm not going to let anybody step on you or molest you out. It's because at some festival, right? You don't want to abandon your body in public.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not necessarily the best places to take psychedelics where I end up working at festival environments, but it's where a lot of people do.
Yeah, I've had the same thought, I mean, we could talk about that, and I would like to talk about that a little bit or ask you a bit more about that at some point, is this whole notion of set and setting, which you're familiar with, because, we all know, I mean, anyone who's worked with these medicines, experienced them personally, knows that they can bring up some pretty powerful stuff, and, there are a lot of people these days, like, with universities like Johns Hopkins and so on that are doing very deep work with people who are in pretty dire situations, like cancer patients and so on, and it's bringing up deep material. So you don't really have control over whether that happens necessarily when you're at a festival, right? I
Right.
mean that if you take a strong enough substance, a strong enough dosage, something can come up. So, but I just want to get, for the many people, quite honestly, including myself, who have not been to these kinds of events in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so. I mean, I
Come to
come,
Burning Man, camp with us. You.
well, sure, I'd love to, just for educational
I mean,
purposes.
just to see what it is.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah,
fascinating to know about firsthand.
yeah.
Come for a few days and just know what people are talking about.
I would definitely like to do that once we get a chance to, cross borders and such. Well, it's not that I've never been to anything like that. It's just that they've evolved a lot since I was young enough to be foolish like that. So we had, for my generation, there were rock concerts and things tended to be where people were taking a lot of those kinds of substances. And there was nothing, as I recall, there was certainly nothing there for assistance for people. There were no tents. So again, for the people that may be watching or listening to this who aren't familiar with that particular scenario, you have a tent of some kind, do you?
Yeah, well, so festivals now have become a lot, at least these, quote unquote, transformational festivals.
Mm-hmm.
There's a broad range of things that are sort of trying to fit into that general subset, but they are overtly psychedelic playgrounds. They have psychedelic art and, DJ DMT is playing, and because of the Rave Act and other complications, they have to say no drugs on the flyer, and there's it's officially drug-free events, but more and more people are acknowledging the reality that this is more set up with the understanding that half of the people, at least on one night or another, are going to be altered in some way. And so yeah, we have a tent, we have domes, we have lotus bells, we have different structures, because I work with 7 different groups, and sometimes I just do it myself at flow events, and I set up pitch on my own little canopy, right? So it kind of depends. If it's Zendo Project, which is the MAPS flagship project, right? Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They have a offshoot called Zendo Project, which is the psychedelic sanctuary that started at Burning Man and now does several other festivals. And they have a big, beautiful setup. We've got 20 beds and but sometimes it's just a cot in the back behind the medical tent.
People come to the festivals. The drugs are widely available. I want to ask you about that too. Well, actually, let's start there since I mentioned
Yeah,
it.
well,
There's all
somehow
kinds.
other people are getting a hold of them. I think that drugs have just become more widely available culturally, generally, but there's always the young entrepreneur in the parking lot, who
Right.
is often selling little baggies of, powder from China and telling people that they're pure MDMA, which is not always the case. So, there's a quality issue at good festivals or festivals that are being responsible. I think we often have drug testing, Dance Safe, that works with us is there, and you can bring up a sample of what you have, and they will tell you what we can find out about it. We won't be able to tell you the dose, but we can say, well, it does contain some MDMA. Looks like also potentially something speedy, and that way they can, or this is 2CX. I don't know. It's not registering as 2CB or 2CI, but it's in that family, and that's all we can tell you. But at least it's some information.
So, could you make a wild guess at the very approximate percentages of which drugs are being taken at these? Like, is it, say, 25% psilocybin and 25% acid and 25% MDMA
Yeah,
or something?
it depends on. I mean, so what we see, what comes in pretty intensely at Sanctuary is usually acid plus. So it's like took either too much acid or acid and a combination of then I did a big line of ketamine and now I'm spun. Right. Ketamine is on the rise still, which I don't personally like what it's doing to festival culture because it feels like aren't really going for the deep trance ketamine experience so much as just using it like psychedelic cocaine, and they, just a little bit to stave off sobriety sickness. And they're just making everything that they do at the festival a little more difficult. It's a little more difficult to walk around. It's a little more difficult to find your friends. It's a little more difficult to dance. Like you're wearing the heavyweights, but like, you know, it's not sober, and so people are just doing little bumps of ketamine all the time, which if it's mistaken for cocaine, for instance, somebody will often hork up a big line of it, and then, oh boy, fortunately that only lasts for 45 minutes.
Yeah, well, one thing that kind of comes up for me in, as you say these things is, sounds like I've never taken ketamine, so I don't know its effects. I've certainly heard about it a bunch, but it sounds like people are taking it and it doesn't add, what would you call it, like a soulful or heart quality to their experience.
No, I don't. I mean, anything that sort of opens up your consciousness a little bit has the potential to do that just because you feel like you're experiencing things more vividly. And so that includes, oh, my friend that I love, but it doesn't have that heart opening quality that MDA or MDMA has, or even mushrooms and acid. In my opinion, it's a little bit robotic, but the music is getting a bit more robotic too. It's not I'm a little old lady, and it's not a part of the culture that I most deeply resonate with or understand.
You mean the music or ketamine or both?
I mean, that whole bit, the sort of robotic ketamine chemically vibe. I like, mushrooms in the forest.
Yeah.
But I'm not judging. I don't think it's worse than alcohol.
Oh no.
When we
No.
end up with people who are belligerent, they're sort of on the line between sanctuary and security. Alcohol is usually the culprit.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. We definitely do not want that.
Which is freely available and being sold at many festivals.
Yeah, and in my opinion, a very bad mix with
Oh, very
any
bad
of the
mix.
psychedelics, including cannabis, because I did mix them a bit when I was in my early 20s. I would go to a party and I would drink and smoke pot,
Yeah.
and depending on how you handle that and what you do with it, I found they both amplify or potentiate each other's effects. So the cannabis makes you feel like you've had more alcohol, and the alcohol makes you feel like you've had more cannabis. That's my
Oh,
experience
it's interesting.
anyway.
It's like the opposite of the alcohol and cocaine thing, where it's like you can do more of each because
Oh yeah,
it's like, oh, this feeds you down and that slows you. I
right.
can't do cannabis anymore. I can take one puff, and I smoked pot for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I took 6 months off for a lucid dreaming practice. I took this wonderful class with a guy who was 3 years in prison for moving medicine of some sort, and he said that the only way he could come up with an aesthetically satisfying universe in which this is what had happened is if he got some crazy superpower out of it. And lucid dreaming seemed to be the one that was available because he was super excited to run around in the woods with his friends and not motivated by the external environment at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked for it and he got it. And he said, try just taking 6 months off of cannabis, and if it doesn't help, go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it did help, but not only that, now it won't let me back in. And if I take if I take more than one puff of cannabis, I get, paranoid, like abstracted, contentless anxiety. And I remember people saying this when I used to be a heavy smoker, and being like, what are you talking about? It mellows me out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's let me go for a while.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know, but that's a kind of a niche specialty area of my interest. I have this book that I'm the editor of and one of the contributors to called Cannabis and Spirituality. So
CBD still works for me.
Yeah, interesting. But I think cannabis needs to be treated, especially with the potency that you have with a lot of stuff these days, and
Oh,
especially
people
when you
act
get
like
it.
it's not even a drug, and then they had a couple of the wrong gummy bears, and they end up at Sanctuary.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
how
Yeah.
many? Well, I don't know, 50 milligrams. Well, there you are. Yeah, you're tripping balls.
Yeah. So it needs to be treated as a sacred medicine as well,
Well, and
and
it's a plant teacher.
absolutely, and even the paranoia. I wrote about it in my book that can be a cause of the fact that it is a reality, engendering substance, or a entheogen in that sense that it makes it can make you feel really exposed and vulnerable. I mean, paranoia is really just kind of an elaborate story on fear, but it's still fear, right? It's all
Right.
about.
Why do I feel vulnerable? It must, and then, that's the thing often see in Sanctuary too with
Yeah.
contentless anxiety, where it's like, okay, the first thing is I'm feeling afraid, and then your mind looks for a reason why. It must be that those guys are after me.
Exactly. That's
It must
paranoia.
be that something bad's about to happen.
Yep.
And so it'll build a story around the fear itself, where the fear is just the physical sensation of fear, and now we're looking for a reason to explain it.
Beautifully said. That's exactly my view of it. And because cannabis is an amplifier, it tends to, potentiate that problematic possibility, right? Um, Whereas, as you say, fear, I mean, that's, spiritual teachings like Buddhism have guidance about how to work with fear. It's like you don't buy into the story, you just stay present and breathe, and it has a possibility of dissipating and you can move through it, right? Yeah.
No, and
Anyway.
it's a good practice.
Yeah. So, getting back to the work that you're doing or have been doing at the festivals, one thing I was impressed with that interview you did with Eamon was a reference, I think more than
On
once.
Life is a Festival.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
that was a great
We'll give
one.
him a shout out. Yeah. um, uh, you said that it's how did you put? I don't. You can correct me, or you can tell me how you put this. I don't remember exactly, but it was something like we're not. It's not about breakdown. It's about breakthrough, right?
Well, that's what I am interested in breakdown to breakthrough, right? Like I'm
Breakdown to
interested
breakthrough. Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
process. And because often when people come in, it's because it is broken down. They are naked and they've been brought in by security and they're raving, or somehow they've just managed to claw their way to the tent or ask someone, their friends brought them in, and they're having a serious psychedelic breakdown. And I can see that turn around in 45 minutes to the most important breakthrough that they've ever had, where they're weeping with gratitude. I just freaking leveled tonight. I figured out something that, it's something, there was a big blockage and it's come unstuck. And I didn't expect it to happen. It's symbiosis here. But, well, here is an opportunity, let's let this happen. Like, this was more important than anything else you thought might happen at this festival, right? You're finally figuring it out about the thing with your sister. Great. You know, let's focus on that.
So what do you do? I mean, apart from the fact that you're obviously very present with the person, in a general sense, and very compassionate, I'm sure. But are there commonalities to the sort of approaches that you take to people coming into these kind of
Yeah,
situations?
I
What is
mean,
it that helps them? What do you do? What kind of a situation do you create that helps them move from breakdown to breakthrough?
so, well, Zendo Project, has guidelines, and Nest that I've been working with is sort of, I'm helping develop guidelines. So some of the basic things that Zendo talks about is like talking through, not talking down, right? So we're not patronizing you. We're not telling you that, you're just crazy and not making any sense. We're not, treating you like a child or pathologizing it. We're just saying, oh wow, what's that like for you? You know, that sounds intense, right? Not like, no way, there's no aliens. Come on, man, You just say, wow, that must be,
So just
that must be a
honoring
pretty
their
intense
experience
experience.
without judgment, right?
Making a safe place for them to feel safe, where they feel like there's nobody that in their visual field that seems threatening, and where they can feel safely cradled, where their physical body is going to be taken care of if they fall out of that. And so sometimes that means matching them with somebody that is just, some people want a female guide, and some people want a male get guide, and some people want, if they just don't feel safe with men, sometimes we'll switch out, or sort of depending on what the person's particular needs are. And then matching, I think, is one of them. Like, if they're all up here, like I tend to be, where they're super excited and manic even. And then, oh, okay, well, I'll come up there with them and then start slowly leading it back down. Oh, wow, 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 wow. And there was a girl who was like, wow, mom, wow, 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 whoa, 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 wow. And so I talked to her like that for a while, right? Whoa, wow, wow, right? Whoa. And, till we could bring it back down. And then, well, one of the Zendo standards is, whatever's going on is perfect. And I actually sort of yes and that one, because people will get into loops where the same thought cycle is happening internally maybe 100,000 times, and when you go through a mental process, this is why we train for things, right? Enough times, the neurons become associated. And now this is how a software problem becomes a hardware problem, right? And so I don't, now those neurons have become trained, and that you're likely to fall back into that mental groove if you dig one. And so if I can break a loop, then I totally will. Yes, whatever's happening is perfect, but it would be better if we could break this loop. And so we're going to see if we can, next time it comes around, like just kind of veer it off the track a little bit. Yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, infinity, giant, sometimes people will have a thing where they keep saying it, they keep coming back to this moment, and we just see if we can shift it, And, sometimes it's a little bit quote unquote shamanistic. Like I just say I'm a superhero because I co-opt my own culture. I don't know what a shaman is, but I has powers, tries to save the world. But sometimes I can do a thing that's like 1, 2, 3, and we're back. And how did you do that? I don't know. But I've been practicing for 20 years, and sometimes I can do it. And if I can just get him to look me in the eye, 1, 2, 3, and we're back, time resumes its normal flow. And then we've got to, sometimes they fall back out and we got to do it again, right? But like, I can't teach it. I don't know it. I didn't learn it from a lineage. It's just trial and error, but I can feel it sometimes if I can be in resonance with someone. And
Yeah.
I used to say, well, maybe I'll take a little bit of something when we first started, so I'd be sensitive, I could see where they went. Oh, no, 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 no. Now I don't want to do that at all. I don't want to. I always say, if you can see that kid's screensaver, you're too freaking close. When you see the colors that are dripping down their mind, like, I don't want any contagious psychedelic whatever you've got going on. Actually, I have a nice shield between me and them, and they can ground on me, and it just pours over me and into the earth, and I don't want to follow them in there.
Yeah, I understand. Does working with body energy and the breath come into it much at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the breath, in fact, is the first thing. And I always tell people, look, I know this sounds corny, oh, breathe, yeah, right. But like, really, this is a way that we can move it from, I never remember which one's the sympathetic and which one's the parasympathetic nervous system.
You want to move toward the parasympathetic.
Okay, so if we just breathe calmly and slowly, when
That's the
you're
calm one.
able to understand what I'm saying and actually do it, it will switch you over into another mode of your nervous system, and it will start calming you down. So it takes a while sometimes for them to catch what I'm saying and actually do it. But when you're able to do it, I'll just do it with you. I'll demonstrate it. And sometimes I'll follow my breath, right? Yeah. See how that's better? We're going to do that for a while.
Beautiful.
And also body, I don't know it's not ASMR, but what's that? There's a therapy where it's kind of like right hand, left hand. But I think that when they've done brain scans of people who are having bad trips, sometimes what's happened is the hemispheres have come, they're not communicating with each other well. And so if you can do even just a simple like patty cake with someone that's making, because the right side controls the left hand and the other way, and so it makes them coordinate right hand, left hand actions, and it makes the hemispheres talk to each other. And sometimes that's what was the problem. So if you can do something as simple as that, even, or let's dance, let's just do this together, right? Like, right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
And it really, it's surprising how effective it is.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's great. As you were saying that, a sort of a sequential, so to speak, thought came up in my mind, which is, I assume there are some ethical guidelines that go along with
Definitely.
this. Do you want to describe those a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we're not therapists. Some of them are. Some people who work for Zenda projects are either, some of them have PhDs in therapy, and some of them are, practicing therapists. But I'm not allowed to, for instance, give medications, right? Um, and mostly nobody at medical is either. Like sometimes there'll be one real doctor who can prescribe something, but that's not what we do, right?
Hmm.
And in the bad old days, sometimes the merciful thing to do would be to drop a Valium on the ground and, tell the person's partner, oh, speaking of psychedelic synchronicity, that looks like a Valium on the ground. If you pick it up and give it to him, it will probably take the edge off. But I can't do that, right? But now we're really, trying to, because Zendo Project could get in so much trouble, right? And so we really can't fool around with, that sort of thing. We don't, um, even though you mercifully want to sometimes, the no sexual energy, with people, even after. I feel like, certainly not for months, not at that festival later, right? Because you're sort of occurring as this sort as like a doctor figure to them, like a powerful, shamanic figure in their trip
Hmm.
if you're helping them, and so then to later take advantage of that by getting into a sexual thing with them, even if it's their idea, is a little bit iffy, and so we don't do that. Sometimes they'll just start masturbating or whatever, and you're like, hey, it's family show, and you got to remind them, you know, and then they, oh yeah, right, and then 5 minutes later they forget, right, and you're like, oh dude, hey, remember about, just put it away, right, sorry about that. But I certainly can't get involved in any of that and wouldn't want to.
Hmm.
Um, I think another ethical consideration for me is not to lay my personal trip on people. Like, oh, I want to tell them how I think the universe works.
Hmm.
And like, as they're feeling it, I'm like, yeah, it's like this, it's like this. No. I don't get to overlay my idea of what is going on in the universe onto them when they're impressionable. As much as that would be fun, I can do that with my friends, but not with people who come in for help.
Yeah, indeed. No, good one. Yeah. Does that cover it for the ethical
That's all I can think
consideration?
of right now. Can you think of
Yeah.
any other? I'm sure
No,
there are some. I mean,
no, no.
like I said, is the answer to "Are you being detained?" is no, right? So if they want to go, they can
Hmm.
go.
Yeah.
But sometimes, we really think that they would be safer with us, and so we're not going to hold them down.
Hmm. Of course.
But sometimes, like there was a girl who was just she was having a really sexual opening, and she was like, "Why isn't anybody, having anal sex with me or whatever?" And we and I just want to be. And we're like, "Listen, somebody's going to take her up on it. She wants to go out there, but we can't, you know." And we ended up keeping her as long as we could, and then having somebody go with her. So we had a big guy, come along with her and just spend the evening trailing around after her and being like, no to the guys, we're watching her. She's not available, in fact. and, and she was very grateful in the morning.
That's great. So, do you typically, at most of these festivals, are you kind of overwhelmed with customers, so to speak, or like are people
It
coming in all
depends, but
night, or
yeah,
yeah?
it's really rare that you have a shift where there was nothing at all.
Mm.
There's certainly peaks where it's like, 3 hours after the DJs come on, or, sometimes right after a certain set, like there'll be a very psychedelic set, shot Tipper's playing or Sprangel's playing, and then as soon as that DJ gets out, then all of those people who are really high and dancing to that are suddenly milling around in the cold and dark. And they stop dancing, and the wind blew up, and now it's real funny out there, right? And so there'll be a wave. where like 20 people came in the same 15 minutes, right?
Mm.
Um, but it's pretty steady even during the day. Like there's a it used to be my good friend Erica Siegel who runs Nest, which is sort of an emerging. She was one of the coordinators for Zendo Project for a long time. We just decided this had to be done. Maybe I mean, how many? I don't know if it's quite 10 years ago now. And so we started just volunteering with a medical group. And it was just she and I working back to back like Civil War nurses, and there'd be 12 of them and two of us. And if one of us has to tap out and sleep, we'd tap the other one back in wake up. There's more than I can handle, right? And so it has grown since then to where we mostly have enough people to handle it. It's very rare that we even have to have more than a one-on-one.
Hmm.
Where you have one person who's primarily your person, which is really ideal.
Yeah, great. Wanted to ask you, I think it was in that interview on Life as a Festival that you mentioned a woman named Ashley Booth and the Awareness
Yeah,
Project.
I
Sounded
love
interesting.
Ashley.
Can you describe that a bit?
Oh, Ashley's wonderful. Yeah, she heads up if you just look up Aware Project, YouTube stuff will link to all of it. And I think I'm on there doing Mapping the Source, my poem about 5-MeO DMT. But she's a good friend of mine, and she's been working with me at Zenda Project for many, many years. And she has been talking about wanting to do more integration circles. I know she's doing integration stuff, even during the pandemic over the internet, if people need to talk about their trips with somebody. Because a lot of times, after it's over, there's no integration process, and it's actually they might have even had a fairly pleasant experience, but now they're trying to work out the meaning of that, or they're getting spontaneous reactivations or whatever. And so her idea was, we haven't really got it going solidly yet, but like, if you just know that out in front of Sanctuary every morning at 11:11 there is going to be a peer-led integration circle where you can come and talk about, oh hey, I got abducted by aliens last night. I had this crazy telepathic experience. Like I just kept looping, and people can say, oh, that's happened to me too, or just share and sort of help ground and be able to tell the story. It's one of the things I learned from the birth doula training is after it's over, it was a bunch of chaotic pieces in your memory, and the ability to tell the story from beginning to end. I took this drug, and then I went out to see this band, and then I went to the porta potties and I got lost, and I was having this experience, and then I ended up at, and so that they were able to tell the story as one piece, and now I'm fine, right?
Hmm.
Is super important, and sometimes they don't want to. Some people are there alone, and some people don't necessarily want to tell all of that to their friends,
Hmm. Oh, yeah,
because
of
they
course.
want to
That's
maintain their psychedelic cool. Well, how did you do last night? Oh, I had a great time, but like, oh my God, actually, they were like hunkering down under a, piece of art all night, rocking themselves.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of the reason there are a lot of therapists on the planet is that ideally they are there's a confidentiality there for one thing, and they're not involved in your life, so they can be hopefully one would hope more objective. They
And there's a
can,
rising tide of therapists who
yeah,
do have training in psychedelic awareness, and they're not just like, well, you shouldn't take drugs.
yeah, exactly. Uh, just so I'm clear, and anyone who's watching or listening is also clear, the Aware Project does online integration sessions. Was that what you were
I
describing?
know that they were, and I don't want to speak for what they're currently doing, but
Uh-huh.
I do believe that they're both putting out talks, and that there is some kind of integration work that Aware Project is doing now.
Yeah.
It would definitely be worth looking up and linking to.
It's really important work. So yeah, I had a couple of questions that are similar to or related to this notion of what happens after. And I think in that same interview you used the term post-ecstatic bliss disorder. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I think that when people have extremely, like for instance, 5-MeO or toad experiences or something where it's very short, sharp shock, and maybe it was the most blissful thing that's ever happened in your life, but I feel like the mind processes it a lot like it does processes trauma. Like, I don't know what to do with that information, and I'm just going to put it in a box, and sometimes they will actually, it's like waking up from a dream. They'll not be able to remember it or just talk about it in 15 minutes, like it didn't happen. And, that it becomes suppressed that quickly. And so it continues to try to rise up and break through the same way that trauma does. Just that suppressed experience of, bliss, ecstasy, gnosis, whatever it is, where, I was the entire universe for 15 minutes, right? That it is a kind of a trauma.
Oh,
And
I
even if it
understand.
was a pleasant one, it can be ontologically, destabilizing, where, okay, the world is not what I was picturing it is, but I don't have anything cogent to replace that with.
No, I
Um,
understand that completely from experience and from,
right? And
observation.
so,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not allowed to lay my trip on them, but like, to help them sort of explore that themselves, so that and what ends up happening is they find me on Facebook, and then I become unpaid ships counselor to, a lot of people who just want to go, and I do know that it's important to be able to draw boundaries and to say, look, I'm not your therapist, but I, I'm very compassionate, and I tend to want to say, well, tell me about how that's been going for you. I remember how it was at Lightning in a Bottle, did you ever end up talking about that with those people? Like, and, now we're friends. We start having conversations. And when times of trouble come up like this, there was a week when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, like last, where there was just a wave of mental health crisis amongst my friends. And I had three that, one of them I had to refer to outside counsel because I was afraid they might kill themselves, um, that were just needed pretty constant, you know, anchoring. And they were real friends of mine, not people who had just, I'd met, through my festival work. But, I have a tendency to want to help people sort their stuff. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I'm a listener.
Well, that's one of the most important elements of a good therapist, anyway. So, another theme that's related to that I think you've spoken about, which is interesting as well. Like you just spoke about how, people get jetted into, or like beam me up, Scotty, into these completely foreign realms, and then they have to come back and try to figure out how that fits into a daily life in a world where nobody else gets it except the community of people who have also
Right.
had those experiences. So one of the things that tends to happen, and has
And
been
those people
happening.
have whack theories.
Yeah, and that's been one of the phenomena that's been happening. Phenomena that's been happening since these substances started to become popular in the late '60s and early '70s. Is people have when they've had a very, you might say, positive experience of connection with the divine, ultimate reality, whatever, and then they think like they know something, and then instead of being able to come back and be empty or humble with that, they start thinking that they are the new Messiah or something. And
Oh God.
one of the terms for it has been called spiritual materialism. But you've
I haven't
seen,
heard spiritual materialism, but I know
yeah,
about the phenomena. I think
yeah,
it's very interesting. And almost the further you go towards ego dissolving, like the 5-MeO, like facilitator community
yeah.
is like a shockingly egotistical. Not everyone, right? But it's interesting. I think I've sort of thought of it as like, how there are antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria. It seems like there's psychedelic resistant strains of ego. Like you didn't quite kill it, and the thing that survives can take it, right? And and so the thing that floats to the top can freaking take it, and it is a really tough ego to squash. In fact, and I think that it would be cured if partly by understanding how many people have that same experience. You and everybody else who's ever been there. I'm not saying that you're not God, but like no more than anything else is, right? But
Yeah.
it's exciting to have knowledge, and you to be the person maybe to, then they want to introduce the rest of their college pals to mushrooms or something and like lay down the wisdom, right? They've been listening to some Terrence McKenna and they had a few experiences and their friends haven't, so now they're the guru of this. it gets dangerous when they start, then saying, "Oh, I'm a shaman," and like I said, especially in the 5-MeO community, nobody's a fuck. Pardon my language. Nobody's a shop. They're people with access to drugs who can lay down a nice vibe, and sometimes, they have a little bit of energetic, balancing experience. Nobody can come in after you in that thing. There's not a long lineage tradition about it. In fact, there's statues and stuff of little frogs that suggest that it goes way back. There's not an unbroken tradition. We're figuring this out. And so, people sort of posing as somehow DMT didn't come out this way. DMT like got to be something that it's okay to do in your dorm room, right? But like 5-MeO like has this different mythos around it. You have to have a shaman come and do this thing with you, right? And so that people sort of grant them some sort of magical powers that they don't necessarily have,
Yeah, no, well
Oh,
put.
but I worked with a shaman though, and you're like, you worked with somebody with access to drugs
Yep, I
who's
think
given
both.
this out a lot. Maybe they're really good at holding space.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think that's part of the, the planetary consciousness transformation these days is that we're supposed to be moving out of an old way of being where there are, people that we put on pedestals, so to speak, that we think of as authorities or whether it's gurus or whatever, right? And now we are moving into a time, I believe, and I think a lot of other people are saying this too, that we can't do that anymore. We have to find our own empowerment and not put these people above us. Sigmund Freud, way back, 125 years ago or so, labeled it transference, where you transfer your own intelligence, sense of judgment, empowerment onto somebody that you think is wiser or more authoritative than you. And in doing so, you're diminishing your own ability in that sense, your own intelligence.
I
So we
mean,
have to watch out for that too.
no, 100%. We
Yeah,
have also obviously there's people that we can learn from. I'm sure you have, intellectual heroes that you have learned a lot from.
absolutely.
And they're not gods.
No.
And if you put them up on a pedestal and then you find out that they were cheating on your wife and now it's now it's heartbreaking, don't do that. But like they're
Yeah.
people for sure, but like there's people that you get a lot of wisdom from. And for instance, I worked with a lady in the Amazon when I had a very serious problem that I'm not going to get into, but I was lack to die, and I found the right person to work with, and she was mediating, this experience with whatever, whether it was the spirit world or the plant or it was, I have a difficult time putting the situation into words, but like she was good at it. Like she was mediating that experience. If I was having too strong a vision, I would raise my hand and she'd come over, suck air over my head, and the visions would go down. Oh, okay, thanks. There's people who are good at that and who can come in after you and who can block this room so that nothing else gets in here. And like I asked her, look, if I go around and blow smoke outside of the Zendo space at a festival, will it help? And she's like, I mean, yeah, just your intention helps. You're like one level above a villager in like D&D or whatever. Like you're, but it's better than not doing it. And, there's people who get better at it. I think there's just people who have had a few experiences and now they feel like they're freaking enlightened masters and they think that they can, do that. And then a wind blows up in there. They're running an ayahuasca session and, whatever, California, and they really do have something that I don't know from demons, but that people might describe as some kind of demonic attack in there. They know what to do, shake the rattle at people. Doesn't help, right?
No, no, no. You really have to know what you're doing in that territory. I think absolutely. I know a guy who's a psychic, and he's a very powerful one actually. And he doesn't like psychedelics. He's used them. He told me that he actually was a
Does he do
guide with.
cannabis?
He was a guide with peyote for about 20 years,
Oh,
but he doesn't. He. It's not that he doesn't like them. It's that this is the kind of guy who could walk. He told me this. He could walk into a bar, and when he sees people that have had a fair amount to drink, their sort of protective aura is got gaps in it or breaks. And he
yeah,
said they're actually. He said he's seen these. He's the kind of guy that would see this stuff, right? The little jellyfish-like things coming in and sort of clinging on to those people, and he thinks that most people doing psychedelics, or the majority of the people that are doing doing psychedelics aren't aware that they're very much potentially opening themselves up to energies that want to suck off them. Do you have any
I'm
sense of
afraid
that?
it might be true. I mean,
Yeah.
this is partly why I've been stuck for 5 years not writing my Arrowhead. I had this wonderful position. It was the best position I could possibly want. I was a writer for Arrowhead, my favorite psychedelic site. My post got like millions of views. I didn't get paid, but like, it's the only column on Arrowhead. They get 100,000 unique visitors a day. Like, I had a voice in this thing that's the most important thing in my world. And I promised this nice lady who probably saved my life that the next thing I write would be about her ayahuasca retreat. And I, it's very difficult for me to ethically figure out how to say what I want to say to that community, because what I got from the experience was this message that, other times, except ayahuasca like a dragon, don't you realize you're using an insentient browser that doesn't give a shit about you? And like, that sort of like that other psychedelics had, not that they were evil, but that had just opened me up, like, bad porn pop-up Windows 99, not a very, very good virus blocker on it. And that, I had just been broadcasting wideband, and in fact I had all kinds of little subroutines and cookies that had been put on my system by little things that, and in fact little, suckers and leeches on my. And, the lady I was working with said, well, everybody has a few. It's like barnacles on a whale. It's not that big a deal. But, you find one of those whales that's just whole encrusted with barnacles, and, you've got a situation. Or sometimes you get one that's really bad, right? And so, most people get through life with a few weird little attachments, and it's just, it's what it is. But, like, some of them are seriously malware, and can mess you up, and you really, now you are going to have to go get an ayahuasca, cleaning out, and it's not going to be very fun. So
Yeah.
it wasn't fun for me. So since then I've been a little bit scared to just, open up wideband and be like, come time share my nervous system. I'm wide open. I'm a spiritual tourist with a $20 bill taped to my soul. Like, knowing that I don't really have the training to know that that's happening, to keep it from happening.
Yeah.
And at the same time, these have been the most informative experiences, the most, beautiful community bonding experiences of my life, and I want to be able to take psychedelics to festivals. I want to be able to, a lot, and just really push the edge. And I was offered training at this place. Would you want to come back and do diets? But the thing is, if you start down that path in that culture, then your students' enemies, your teachers' enemies, students, like, their training is just to go try to get you, just to, like, if you don't want to play their reindeer games, you're already on a board where you have friends and enemies in that world, at least in the Iquitos area, and like, I don't want to play that, and so suddenly you're offered all the Jedi training you ever wanted. But, like, it comes with this weird video game that they're logging on and showing up in each other's ceremonies and throwing little darts at each other, and, like, no, thank you, right?
Yeah, it's a distressing aspect of the work, and to me, it argues, if it doesn't argue to not do these things at all, it argues for really thorough, training for people that are guiding these things, and a deep, deep understanding on their part, on the people who are holding the container, that this is possible. For example, traditional Tibetan Buddhist practice, and they weren't using medicines even, but when they did their, sort of more in-depth practices like the Vajrayogini practices and things like that, the first thing they did, because I was part of that world for a while, so I did that practice for a while, and the first thing we did, we had these 5-hour ceremonies that involved visualizing and chanting and things like that. The very first thing that happened was that one person got up with like a metal bowl with sand in it and thing you could hold it by, and they put one of those kind of charcoal plugs on it, and then they put some incense on it, and then they would walk around the perimeter of the room, and we had some specific, ancient, excuse me, handed down chants that were like, all lower beings be gone, only
Right,
higher...
set the protections in the room, even just like people, you sage a thing out, or Palo Santo or something, like, it's because it's partly the intention, but there may be actual magic, and I mean, I don't know what I mean by magic. Maybe this is some sufficiently advanced technology in a certain sense, but like I got the sense that it was something like they're not afraid of smoke. It was like the way
Hmm.
that you drag a folder on a folder and file on your desktop. She's blowing smoke. They're not afraid of smoke. She's setting the permissions on the room somehow, right?
Mm, yeah.
Right.
No, I think it's really important. And, I also, another world that I traveled in for about a dozen years was the Native American church, their
Oh
peyote
wow.
prayer ceremonies. And they hold like a, I would say, as close to perfect or impeccable a container as you could imagine. And
Wow.
they use smoke a lot. I mean, the fire itself, is
Yeah.
transformative. And then there's somebody whose job for the whole night is to be, that's what's called the cedar man or cedar person. And that person has a bag full of crumbled up, dried cedar. And, for many purposes over the course of the night, they throw cedar on the fire. Whenever somebody comes into the teepee who's just been
I
outside of
have
it,
like Palo Santo on my desk right here, just because like
yeah,
I
yeah,
I do that thing.
yeah, yeah.
Whether it's a placebo effect or it certainly makes me feel protected and cleared.
Yeah, that's great. So I have one more question I want to ask you that's sort of in this same kind of territory of, the things that can go wrong or what happens after and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know if you have an answer for it. I don't know if anybody actually has an answer for this question, but I'll throw it at you anyway. Yeah. And that is there a way to do you think there's a way to be able to determine how much to trust any particular information that's coming into you during a psychedelic experience? In other words, let
God,
me just preface that or set that up with an anecdote from Jeremy Narby's
please.
book, DNA and the Cosmic Serpent. He referenced, I think it was Michael Harner way back in the 1950s, who was one of the first pioneers that from the white world that went down to South America and used ayahuasca and wrote a book on it, hallucinogens and shamanism or something like that. Anyway, he talked about when he was first doing ayahuasca with an ayahuasquero, a shaman. He had this experience where these reptilian beings presented
Mm-hmm.
themselves and they told him, "We are the rulers of the universe." And so he told that to the shaman in the morning. And the shaman just rolled his eyes and said, "Ah, they always say that."
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't, this is a very important question, and let me take it from a couple of angles. I really, I mean, look, I've been looking at a lot of sense making stuff right now, just like how can we tell what's going on in the world? Is there global warming or, are these Democrats all pedophiles or is like, of course, yeah, how do we have these basic, we don't even agree on the basic idea of what's happening. Some people think this is what happens when mass spin and gravity. Some people think baby Jesus. Some people think it's a simulation, right? We, we don't even have a basic agreement about what's going on in the universe in the first place. And then we don't have a basic idea about what's going on, you know, in the world climate. I mean, scientists do, but people, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have a basic idea about politics or whatever. And so it's especially something like this. And again, if you tell your friends, they'll probably say, well, you were just on drugs. And you're like, no, no, the lizard people told, I mean, this was realer than real, right? And I think that they do DMT entities particularly, I think can be tricksy. And I think that there's a tricksiness that's like part of the whole, whether it's just the element of your own unconscious that's tricksy, because it's hard to tell what the ontology of these things are, but there's a tricksiness in there. And I have a whole bunch of friends who have been come to in various guises and, invited into the Galactic Brotherhood Council, and Galactic Federation. And I'm like, oh my God, imagine if these guys had read us telepathically. They all know we grew up on Star Trek or whatever, right? Like, oh, we want you to join the Galactic Federation. They want you to click on them. They want you to say yes and to be aligned against, okay, like imagine if it was the Star Wars universe and the Empire showed up first and said, like, okay, we need you to help defend against these crazy rebel terrorists, right? You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. What if there was a side with battles and like one side gets to you first? Of course, they're going to present themselves as the guys that are for humanity and that we should help, right? But like either side would say that, or one of multiple sides would say that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that there's a war on in the spirit world, but I'm saying also your imagination. Like when people are paranoid already, like they took some speedy acid or something and they're paranoid, like the things that it's just literally their imagination drawing it in. These
Mm-hmm.
ideas that just tell them that there's this festival is about to be nuked. They've seen it, and it never is, so far. But I'm like, wow, I'm not afraid of that right now, but I understand why that must be terrifying, right? Um, but of all the times that people have thought that something was really about to happen tonight on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, more often than not, by like order of several thousand to one, that's not the case. So I feel pretty comfortable. Um, you know, but a lot of people do get a sense of, for instance, like geological catastrophe is coming to them as information, right? We need to take
Mm-hmm.
care of the planet. Well, maybe that's something the plants are telling us. Maybe that's something they know in their hearts, and it's trying to bubble up to the surface. Um, Basic things like that. If it's like brotherhood and but like this meme of surrender, where it's like, oh, just surrender your soul, just open yourself and let it do its thing. I'm like, mm-hmm. Yeah, surrender. Like, how about a little bit of guarded, like, who are you? What do you want? What's the deal? Even with like ayahuasca, people say, well, ayahuasca told me to do it. I'm on a sacred mission. And I'm like, yeah, did you discuss the terms of that mission? You are also a freaking, sovereign entity. And it's important to be able
Mm-hmm.
to stand up for yourself. Even if these things, let's grant them some reality,
Yeah.
are in fact more powerful and knowledgeable than we are. They don't get to molest us, just like adults don't get to molest babies because they're more powerful and
Mm-hmm.
intelligent and
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated than they are. So, like, they don't get to just come in and, take up space on our hard drive, and they don't get to send us on missions unless we understand,
Mm-hmm.
why the mission is important and what we're getting out of it. And so,
Yeah.
I, and again, there's a lot of different things that say they rule the world. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Spirit doctors, I've had little DMT entities come to me on ayahuasca and be like, we're going to fix this now. And there was a moment of consent. There was a, can we fix this? And I felt in a safe situation. I knew that was a thing that needed to be fixed. And I said, yeah, go for it. And they did. And the thing was fixed. And that was great.
Mm-hmm.
But like I like entities that ask for consent, just like I like
Yeah.
guys who ask for consent. Like
Yeah. Good
sometimes
one.
you consented when you smoked a bitch, but like, but anything honorable will like somebody's got to make that deal, right? If
Yes.
you're living, if you, there's a shaman basically, or something like that in every primary culture. There that position exists, just like war leader does, because somebody's got to do it. There's a interface with this, with whatever, the unconscious or whatever's out there,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody's got to be that guy, or your village is not doing as well as ones that do, and it doesn't survive as well. And so, if you want to be able to find out what the weather's going to be like, or where the game is going to be, or cure the sick person, or whatever it is, then somebody's got to do it. And until very recently in these ayahuasca cultures, you were look, if your kid got sick, you gave a chicken to the old ice cream man, and they would come and do the thing, and you were praying to God you didn't have to do it yourself. You were hoping that they would just do it, and they would prescribe you something that ayahuasca tells you that you need to mash up these leaves and eat it, and that would be perfect. And now white people, these fools are coming, showing up and paying $100. They want to do it, right? And they're like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
but, but not, not everybody is really meant for that.
Absolutely, no. Yeah, Terence McKenna talked about that in some of his work, where the shaman is really the crazy guy that sort of lives at the edge of the village that you don't really want much to do with.
But when you need them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think
And these
that
people
most
are.
people. Go ahead.
Well, one of the guys in the Native American church said, you do not choose to be a shaman, or in their case, a roadman who runs the meetings. They said, you don't choose that path. That path chooses you, and it's a lot of responsibility. It's not something that you can put a badge on and say, now I'm a shaman, right? It's a lot.
Right, you got to really think about, do I want to take this on,
Yeah.
and can I carry that, and what's that going to
Absolutely.
mean? Maybe you're not going to be able to have a family and a normal life, and you're
Hmm.
sort of depending on, certainly you're going to have experiences that were more intense than what you were hoping for.
Yeah, that's right. And oftentimes those people, there's an archetype which I think is quite prevalent, actually, or common. It's just the wounded healer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people, I don't know most. I mean, I have never done, I haven't done a study on it or anything like that. But I think, people I've known personally, oftentimes as well, they had some very serious, far from equilibrium experiences when they were quite young. There's a famous book. Have you ever heard of the book called Black Elk Speaks?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have. I even read it once, but it was back in the lot of marijuana days, and I couldn't quote a lot of it, but I remember really liking it.
Well, it was in my generation it was quite popular. It was a classic, but it was written in the early 1930s. But it's that archetype, because when that black elk was about 12, he got really sick and he fell into a coma, and he was in it for 12 days, and the people around him, this was in a traditional Lakota village or something, in a teepee and so on, and people were attending him and worried that he was going to, ever come out of this coma. But while he was gone, as he reported when he came back, he spent the whole 12 days consorting with elders in the spirit
Oh,
world,
wow.
and they basically said, you're this is your job now for the rest of your
Well,
life.
and he was
right?
in a culture that had an appreciation of that. If he'd been in the Western sort of medicalized model, they wouldn't have made much of it, or they would have medicated him.
Yep.
A lot of times people would have epileptic seizures, or they would be said, oh, maybe you're one of these guys, let's check this out, right? Or if they were having schizophrenic tendencies,
Yep.
oh, maybe you're special, and maybe there's a way that you can help interface with this thing, or
Yep.
maybe you're going to be too off for that, but we could try that. There's a possible cool place for you if this is what's up with you. And even people who've gone through really abusive situations, I think sometimes it's just the cracks where the light pours through.
Yes, and in fact, those are often the people who are ideally, and you just put it quite well, I think, destined to become the potential healers. A fellow I used to know, people put a little, like a quote or something at the end of their emails, and it just goes out with every email.
Yeah, a little footer.
He said, this one was, religion is for people that are afraid of hell. Spirituality is for people who've been there.
Oh my God, I want to write that down on something. Religion is the people who are afraid
For
of hell.
people who are afraid of hell.
Spirituality is for the
is for
people
who've
who've
been there.
The only one I ever had was the Terence McKenna quote about, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed.
I remember
Which
that
actually I
one.
think was a para quote from JBS Haldane or somebody else, but I first heard it from Terence.
Yeah, that's where I heard that one too. I like that one. Yeah.
But Jenna, people have a proclivity. There may be shamanic bloodlines even. There may be some people who just, like, some people are born with a body to be fighters, and they just have the morphology for it. And
Yep.
it may be that brain structure morphology, is usually the shaman's son and their son or whatever, that there may be like just types that are more physically, the way their brain is set up is more set up for this, whether because of early experiences or trauma or because of just the way that they're constructed. But also then, heal thyself first, because people who have had this kind of trauma are also then subject to potential, egoic inflation, et cetera, et cetera. So, you get come and go with that.
Yeah, it's always an issue, and this comes back to, I liked your word. I spoke about it earlier in our conversation as well, about personal empowerment. But you used the word sovereignty, and I think that's so important. And that's what I think. It really is something that we're hopefully being born into at this point of human history, is that the recognition that we are. There's a Buddhist aphorism, I guess it is of the two witnesses, trust the principal one. In other words, without putting your opinion on it, you have to be able to know your mind body, know what the little signals are in your mind body, and then trust that, right? It's what you call it, feeling, intuition, whatever you want to call it, but that's what we're having to learn to trust. Like,
Trust
this
it and
doesn't
measure it
feel
against
right.
reality, as long as it keeps being trustable. Like, if you get it wrong every time and you keep going with that guy who turns out to be, then you might be like, okay, my intuition is off. But like, if you learn to really tune in and really feel the signals more clearly.
Exactly. Well, I think wish fulfillment or desire gets mixed up with intuition a lot of the time. Is the problem?
Right.
You want it to be a certain way.
I feel like the slot machine's about to pay off.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This has been delightful, and I really love hearing the things that you have to say and the way you say them and the sort of enthusiasm that you
Likewise.
have. And we could go on for a long time, but it's already been about an hour and 10 minutes, and I
Okay.
think
Well,
this. might
Thank
be
you so much.
I think it'll be a nice, kind time for viewers and listeners to not go on much
Hi,
longer.
future people. I hope it's awesome in the future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that was another question I might have asked, is where we might be going, but we
Well,
shall
we'll
see.
find out.
Yeah.
It's been I thought it was going to be a lot worse, honestly. We're recording this just a couple weeks after the election, and I thought that there was going to be riots in the streets either way, and like I don't think there is actually. I think that it's kind of, it happened slowly enough that there wasn't one big bang and it's kind of petering out. And like, I'm not expecting civil war or anything. So I think there's going to be a vaccine. I think we're going to have psychedelic therapy, at least in a medicalized model. I'm not an incrementalist. I'm a revolutionary. I really believe that we need to have psychedelic medicines just available for everyone. I believe in bodily autonomy. I believe in self-determination and cognitive liberty. And people say, well, don't push that agenda too hard right now because we're just trying to get the therapized model like cleared. But 15 years ago, people were saying, don't talk about psychedelics right now. We're just trying to get marijuana taken care of. Don't scare them. Right. So all right, we're keeping that on the DL. But I really believe everybody has a right to do what they want with their own mind and body, and they have the responsibility to educate themselves so that they don't do it in some fool-ass way.
Yeah, that's great, and I think I agree with you completely. I think that there's there's sort of like two different streams of how to make things better, and you just nailed them with incrementalism versus revolutionary. You need the people. They say that politics is the art of the possible, right? You need those people who know how to take the next step and the next step
God,
and the next
maps
step.
jumping through every single
Yeah.
hoop for 20 years. Let's do a
Yeah.
double-blind study. Everybody knows who got the drugs, but that's what you have to do, and they did all of the things. Dotted I's, crossed T's, paid millions of dollars, and it's going to work.
Yes, and then you need the visionaries, the idealists, the one that can envision what it could be like. Because, I always like to quote the old. I don't know if you've ever heard of the. He was famous at one point, but he's a little kind of far back in the history now. Is Yogi Berra.
Yeah, he had some funny sayings.
Well, he had a way of saying things that didn't make sense literally, but they made sense when you thought about them. And one of them was, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up somewhere else. Right? So
Ain't that the truth? This is why we need intention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, okay, on that cheery note, I just want to ask you, is there a website or two or any other source of contact that you would like people to pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. My arrowwood.org is my column, which I swear I'm going to push through this and get that ayahuasca essay out there. So the last thing on there's from 2017, but there's 50 columns that I wrote on there. Arrowwood.org, tea time, we'll bring it up. My Instagram is Flowfaerie, FLOWFAERIE. I don't usually post on it too much, but my YouTube, where I've been putting out a little personal podcast, is if you just look up Teafaerie, you should find it, but it's Ruespieler, RUESPIELER is my YouTube channel.
Good. Just have to know how to spell fairy.
Fairy. Yes, Teafaerie, always one word. TEAFAERIE, one word.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, that's been delightful, and thank you for sharing that, and especially thank you for the work that you're doing. I would like to think of it as bodhisattva work. That you said right at the beginning of our conversation that it's not where you would be doing psychedelics generally, but that's
not anymore. I was a psychedelic jackass in my 20s. That's why that's why I'm here. Is I've had bad trips at festivals. I wish somebody had been there.
Yes, exactly. So you're going where the need is, and so on behalf of all the people that are going to show up to them once we get back to being able to do those again, I would like to thank you for that work and the continuation of it. Yeah, very much for bringing this information to people and for bringing a variety of viewpoints to the conversation. It's really important that we be able to see this thing from a bunch of different perspectives, and so it's people like you that are curating that. Okay, well, thanks again. Bye. Mm-hmm.